Hello, everybody. This is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today, it's an honor for me to get to sit down and speak with a trading veteran. He has literally been buying and selling stocks for decades, from his time as a stockbroker in the 1980s to becoming a retail trader during the early days of online message boards, and he still continues to trade today. He's evolved from simply following buy and sell alerts to becoming a self-sufficient and consistently profitable trader. It's a pleasure for me to get to introduce Mr. Tom Brown. Hello, Tom. Happy New Year. Thank you for being here and taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, thank you. That's a kind way of telling everyone I'm really old.
Well, or very experienced and
There you
wise.
go. Okay, I like that. I like that.
So, Tom, you and I have got a chance to speak on the phone a few times, and I always learn a lot from you from just listening. But for those who haven't had that opportunity, I'd like to just start by asking, how did you first get interested and started trading stocks, and how did you hear about the stock market?
There's actually 3 points in my life, I suppose. The first being, I don't know, maybe 12 years old, whatever age you are when you're in middle school. And a friend of mine, Mark Patterson, got this game called Stock Market for Christmas or his birthday or something like that. And him and I and his brother used to play it in his room all the time. And I finally they brought it over to my house and it never left. And I would just play it by myself sometimes. So anyway, I thought that was really fun. The idea of making money with money and things like that. I think that's kind of the first insight into that I had. And then when I got into college, they had the proverbial stock market challenge where they give you money and you buy stocks. And back in those days, this was probably like 1982. So there was no internet. There was, no Yahoo or stock charts or anything like that. You just went to the local newspaper and all the quotes were there. And I really got into that. And that's really when I decided this was something I wanted to do. And that's how I ended up going into the brokerage business, because I was like, oh, I'm going to go make people money. Because I was dumb, I was naive. I had no idea that the brokerage business was just a sales job. It had nothing to do with making money for your customer, basically. And then later on, I guess that was all investing. I didn't even know trading existed until around 2000, I guess. And that's when I had started investing. I had all the crap, Qualcomm and Cisco and RF Micro Devices and JDS Uniphase and all that stuff. And I met this guy who told me it was all going to zero. And he seemed pretty smart, smarter than me and smarter than most others. And turns out my instincts were right. That was Mikhail Shadkin. And that's really when the whole concept that you just trade this stuff first came to be. And that's when I really went over the cliff. And that's when I made the big jump from this is kind of cool to putting money in and really going, trying to do something.
So it sounds like you just continuously found interest in the markets from a young age, and so did you study finance at all? I guess is my first question. Did you study it sort of like in college, and was that your goal, was to go into?
Yeah, well, I was a business major, and economics, finance, and yes, I did, but it's so different. We're talking the early 1980s. It was all about investing, and to me, I won't say I grew up poor, but we had enough to make ends meet and nothing more. So I didn't know people with money and stuff like that. I didn't really know how things worked. And I thought, I thought being a stockbroker was the avenue to making money in the stock market. And but I did like the idea that you were like, it was like you're involved with the world, like you knew the economy, and there was always something going on there. Even in bad times, there was stuff going on. And ironically, it was because of bad times that I actually made it as a broker. Um, because I think I started in late 1985, and I didn't really do that good. It was hard. I was young, and then the market crashed. Well, the advantage to not having a big client base at that time was I hadn't burned anybody. So I was kind of like the guy coming in, putting the pieces back together, and everybody was mad at their broker. People used brokers back then. There was no Ameritrade or Fidelity or Vanguard or anything. And so, yeah, that's when I started really making money as a broker. But by then I realized it wasn't investing. It was a job. It was sales. It was how to close a deal. I mean, I could tell all kinds of stories about, we actually had a sign at one of the offices I was at that said, you made money, the company made money, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So it was, yeah, I think the movie Wall Street came out, and all of a sudden being a stockbroker was cool. Everybody wanted to be one. And, but it did open my eyes to kind of like how the business works, and to go, well, I ain't giving my money to those guys. Um, but I didn't really have a plan of what I was going to do. And I really didn't have that much money at that time anyway, so it didn't matter.
It's interesting that you mentioned, I think those who know of him, Mikhail Shadkin is one of the arguably like greatest traders of this generation. I would say. And so being able to contrast, what you were doing as a broker and this concept of investing versus finding someone like Shadkin who is saying maybe just trade this stuff. How did you sort of grapple with that difference, and what did you continue to just follow what he was saying, and what did that relationship end up being like?
Blind faith, man. I was all in on Mikhail, and he has such an aggressive, dominant personality to begin with, and the results were speaking for themselves. And I was naive. I didn't really know what was going on with the whole .com thing coming apart. I mean, I knew it was bad, and I had inklings, and I just followed. I was just, tell me what to do, man, because I really didn't know how to what the strategy was to get through that minefield. I mean, people today, they've seen a lot of destruction in the past year. Stocks like Tesla coming apart and stuff like that. But an entire index falling 78%, these guys haven't, not many people have ever seen that. Stocks that were hundreds of dollars a share going to under 10. It was a pretty crazy time. And so yeah, I just followed Mikhail and did whatever Mikhail did, and it worked out. I guess I was lucky in that if you're going to follow somebody, of all the people to follow, man, that would be the guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And he's known namely for shorting stocks. So when you were trading, were you starting out more or less, on your own as a retail trader with shorting stocks? Is that mostly what you were doing?
yeah, in that time, because I found McHale, I think right after the dot-com peak, but before the implosion. So the timing was just incredible, right? Because I was able to sell what I had, and not give back a whole lot. And I had never shorted before. I didn't really understand the concept, and I didn't understand anything. In fact, I remember the first stock I ever shorted was Research in Motion, RIM, RIMM, and it was trading at about $100 a share. And I think I had $150,000 account back then, and I just short 1,000 shares of RIM at $100 a share, and I think it falls 3 or 4 points in, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And I'm like, how do I get out? And I'm figuring out, I cover, I make my money, and I'm happy. I mean, I'm like on cloud nine, right? And McHale's like, you idiot. And I think the next day it was at 66. But I should have never had 1,000 shares. If it would have went to 120, I didn't know anything. So, like most people, you got to start somewhere, right? And that's what I did.
How long did that sort of process of following an exceptional trader last?
Probably in total about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
And, and, and were those profitable months, profitable years? Was it just consistently winning on trades?
It wasn't bad. I mean, I didn't do as well then as I do now, but I made money, which is crazy to think of. But I came in and I only knew McHale. I wasn't in the trading world. I didn't know people in the trading world. McHale was the first person that I ever met on the internet, and outside of gamers and stuff. And the way he did it, he was just starting a chat room maybe 2-3 months after I learned who he was. Nobody was doing what he did, and nobody's done that since, which he would make a trade, and he would say this, the symbol, the price he entered, where his stop was, what his target was, what his overall plan was, and what percentage of his account he was. So he would post the trade in chat. A little cowbell would go off. To this day, if I hear a cowbell, I get a physical reaction to it, because the cowbell would go off. You'd run to the computer and you do the math real quick. Okay, it's 3.6%. How many shares is that? And get in. Pretty simple. And I was working full time. I had a lot of responsibility. Really, I was in management, so that worked for me. And then I met another guy in there, Craig Lapid, Craig Trader, I think is his handle on Twitter. I'm not even sure anymore. And for somehow Craig and I hooked up and became friends, and Craig started helping me. So for 15 years, I basically knew two people in the trading business, Mikhail and Craig. And back in the Trader Pulse days, that was Mikhail's chat room. Mikhail and Craig were like Batman and Robin. Craig was kind of Mikhail's protege. He was the guy who understood and took what Mikhail was doing the furthest. So, and he's a legend in his own right. So, yeah, man. I mean, if you're only going to know two people, I did pretty good, and that's what got me through.
So would you say that, it was luck entirely on your side, or would you say it was a combination of luck and like the decision of knowing who to invest your confidence in was sort of what helped you in those early days?
I've always felt the one thing that I've done well in life is read people. I went to work at a software company when I wasn't sure if the guy was a con man or the smartest guy I'd ever met. And I think there was 6 or 8 people there. And by the time I left, there was, I don't know how many hundreds. I was managing like 200 of them myself. And Mikhail just struck me as honest, if nothing else. He would lose, and he wouldn't apologize, and he wouldn't make excuses. He would just move on. Can't win them all, That was a bad idea. Craig was incredibly had a lot of integrity. Craig was super honest about everything in his trading. And so I guess I'm lucky to be able to hone in on those types of things. But I'm also lucky. I mean, how do you just run into Mikhail Shadkin on the Yahoo message boards, and here we are like 22 years later or whatever. And, and of all the people that were in Trader Pulse, how do I end up being friends with Craig? And a little story, I mean, it, but I can tell it now that when Trader Pulse shut down, it's around 2011, I think, 2010, I got the email, and I knew it was coming. It wasn't a big surprise, but I knew I was done, because all I had ever done was follow Mikhail and listen to Craig. And so I knew that kind of sucked, because it wasn't like I was making tons of money, but it was extra money, and it was, it had gotten used to it. And I knew I couldn't do this on my own. And I remember sitting on my porch or out back, and I'm just reading this email thinking, well, that sucks, but it was a good time. It was a great experience. Phone rings, and it's Mikhail. It wasn't a surprise. I kind of figured, he's calling to say goodbye. He was a stand-up guy. He would have done that. And that's one of the reasons he did call. But the other reason he called is he's like, I know you kind of rely on this income a little bit, and you lean on Craig a lot. And so Craig's starting a little room. He's going to be calling you in a little bit. And so don't worry, you can just land over there. And so Craig started a room, and I don't remember all the people, but I know LX21 was in there. I think Tom Kelly was in there for a little bit. So basically it was me and like 7 or 8 legends. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, here we go again. And I'm just doing still whatever Craig is telling me to do. And, through osmosis, you pick stuff up, I suppose, but he was still doing all the work. later on, Craig really started pushing me hard to go do it myself. Like I remember him telling me one time that, you know, you've traded with two of the best traders. We've taught you everything we know. You're better than 99% of the guys out there. I've given you everything I can give you except for the confidence to go do it. So just go do it. And so I kind of gulped and, you know, tried, and it was figuring some stuff out. And then I met a guy that I've noticed in some of your interviews that I've watched. I'm not the first guy or the last guy or the only guy that has run across him, which is All Day Holds. I know Ricky and Alex and some of the other really good traders have crossed paths with him. And what I was kind of keen on and opening my eyes to, All Day Holds sort of filled in some blanks. And that really was kind of lucky in a way, because I was too cheap. I wasn't going to pay to join his chat room. Somebody gave me their password. I went in there and I went, "Oh, this is worth it." You know, it wasn't so much a chat room as it was a lab. It's like going to school. And then somehow, I don't even know how, for the last, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, I don't even know how long it's been. I don't know when it started, but, you know, become really good friends with Tom Kelly, Eric, Alex. I don't know how we all came together and started our own little chat room. So yeah, man, I mean, I've been around 22 years, and I've had for some luck in always ending up surrounded by really not just great traders, but like great people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and people that are fun to hang out with. Like they stimulate your brain. And so yeah, man, I tell people I'm the luckiest trader alive. Just the people I've met and the journey I've been on. And I don't have the stories of, oh, I blew up 3 accounts and maybe I'd be better off if I had, but that's just not my story.
It's a fascinating story. And I've told you this. And one of the things I think is sort of lost in all of this, I keep thinking, is how much are you not giving yourself credit for all that you learned, you know, as you said, through osmosis from being surrounded by such great traders? What were some of the core concepts that you learned that became strengths of yours up until that time?
One of the things I got from Craig, anyone who would spend as much time as I did with Craig would have to get this, was the concept of risk management. Craig is all about risk management. So that's kept me in the game because, you know, I'm not the guy who's going to blow up, because I'm not going to allow that to happen. So that keeps you going. And I think I think in the last maybe 4 years, I've grown more as a trader probably than the first, than up until that point. And one of the things was just trying to figure out something that worked for me. And I think I heard this from Phil, Ozark Trades, that one of the things he would do every year is look at what he did well and what he didn't do well, and do more of what he did well and try to remove what he didn't do so well at. And that's a pretty easy concept to think about and conceptualize, but it's a little bit harder to do because you're always chasing the shiny object, you know. And so you asked, what's one of my strengths? So I think one of my strengths is I can legitimately sit there and watch other guys make money doing stuff that I know I would screw up
Mm-hmm.
and not be tempted
Mm-hmm.
to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
And like Eric trades a lot of stuff that I know he's going to kill it, but I know I'll screw it up. And so I'm happy for him. He's kind of given it on a silver platter, if you will, that and I know how the story is going to end, but I know how the story is going to end for me. Um, and so I'm really good, I think, at knowing what I do well and accepting what I don't do well, and not giving a shit that I don't do everything that good. And I think it's also, to answer you talk about giving myself credit. One of the things that for me that works might crush other people, I suppose, but you look at Mikhail and Craig and Tom and Eric, you're always looking up, right? You're always looking up. So it's like, no matter how good I do, I suck in comparison. And that's almost a good thing. The way my brain works is because it keeps me thirsty. It keeps me from any chest pounding and stuff like that could lead to recklessness.
I think you identifying, risk management as a strength, identifying sort of what your personality or your maybe your risk profile and knowing what you like to trade, those two together, I think a lot of traders might not even be thinking about, or if they are, they might not understand it to the depth that you've come to understand it. And so I think that can be helpful for traders to think about as well.
One thing I'll throw in there, there's an obvious that I suppose I left out, which how do you figure out what you don't do good at? You don't do good at it. So you got to, some of that comes from experience, that you have to take your lumps and then sort that out. There's some things that you can improve. And, so there's things that there's certain trades today that I do well at that I used to not do well at because I figured out how to trade them. And there's other stuff that I just avoid because it just doesn't work for me. So, but the only way you get there is through experience. And, that's not always fun.
One thing that I noticed about you, Tom, is, I mean, you're almost like a student of the world of trading. You understand, you have such a great grasp of these different traders, and so how important is it to have an open mind and to keep an open mind as a trader, regardless of how much experience you already have?
Well, I think you better be willing to have an open mind every day, whether it's just with your bias on a particular trade, or an idea. Yeah, I mean, we're all learning, I hope, and getting a little better at what we do. Kind of suck if we didn't. And I think that one of the things that I've seen as people get better at trading, there seems to be a common theme that less becomes more. And that probably ties into what we were just talking about, of doing more of what works and less of what doesn't work, or completely eliminating what doesn't work, but there's that time period in there that you've got to figure all that out, and so yeah, I know I just saw Mikhail talk about how he's trading less and making more money. I know Tom uh, doesn't trade the way he did 5 years ago, size wise and things like that, but he does better. And I've Alex used to be like shotgunning all over the place, and now he shows up like 3 days a month and kills it. There's another guy that we trade with, Kilo, who is very selective, and he used to trade a lot more and make a lot less. So I think that's just part of the evolution of, like, say, and a common theme of eliminating the noise and focusing on stuff that you're good at.
What are the types of setups that interest you the most these days? What would you consider sort of like your A plus setup, or the one that gets you the most excited to get into a trade? And has that changed over the years? Are there certain trades that, maybe 5 or 10 years ago that you would have been excited to trade, or that would be profitable, that these days you just ignore, you trade less, or you just don't trade it altogether?
Well, as far as what used to get me excited, there's a lot of stuff I don't trade that used to get me excited. The small cap runner is not nearly as exciting to me today as it was, 5, 6 years ago. I just see all sorts of trouble everywhere on that. And so I've lost way too much money getting in on the front side of those trades that, and to be perfectly honest, as far as what I consider A plus, there haven't even been many A plus trades this entire year. There's been, I think, quite a few A plus scalp opportunities, but as far as the big runner, complete reversal, I think that's what most of us would consider an A plus. There's been some out there that have done it. I think iLag was one, but super sketchy, real thin. But yeah, like everybody, I suppose, I started out looking for the action, looking for the shiny object. What's the hot stock today? And when it works, it's great, and when it doesn't work, it's awful. And I like consistency, so it's hard to be consistent doing that. But like for me, I think the closest thing to a real A plus trade for me, and I guess there's two types, was the one thing that comes to mind is like AMC this year. I don't remember quite when it was, but there was a day, and I don't even remember why. It had run from, I want to say, like $18 to $28, and the next morning it was gapping up, and I think it went to around 35, 36 bucks. And that was probably the last trade I was super excited about. I think that was my biggest trade for last year. And that was a trade where the stock was super extended across all short-term time frames that I pay attention to. It was running into big time resistance on some of the longer-term moving averages, and it was running into some really key lines that I had for resistance. And like I said, I want to say it gapped up, went to 35, $36, and it was at 27 in a flash. And uh, but uh, but that's still not the completely coming apart type of trade. But there have been a lot of for this past year where I've done well is scalping um, short-term extension or extension on shorter time frames where you get big extension off of the shorter time frames into a solid known area of resistance, and you're not playing for the stock to fall apart, although I should have a lot of times just because of what happened this year. But it's an easy 50 cents, a dollar. But how long they some call me one candle Tom. So and sometimes I should stick around a lot longer, but my entries have been pretty good on that. So yeah, so this past year has been a little different for me, a little trickier, and but yeah, those big extension trades are what I really look for. Those are the A+ stuff for me in my mind. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm patient enough to really understand better what extension is before I get involved. And so that's why I say a lot of these small caps that have run this year, they're up 30, 40, 60%. That's not enough for me usually to consider them A+.
Okay. And how do you develop your levels, your lines, areas of interest to you? I know you had mentioned, different time frames. Is that important for you, those different time frames in order to establish your levels? What's that look like?
Well, one thing that really changed for me, and I got this, it really developed this after meeting all day holds, is I look at stocks over multiple time frames now, short and longer term. Before I would focus like on a 1 minute and a 5 minute chart. I think that's what a lot of guys do. I always have 3 charts up for every stock I'm trading. I have a 1 minute, a 5 minute, and my third chart, I'm looking at bigger time frames, whether it be 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. I'm looking I'm for what time frame is the stock trending on. So I'm looking at what I'd like to see is some convergence, because I'm mostly short. So I look to see extension on those shorter time frames into resistance on the bigger time frames. And that's usually good for at least a decent scalp. Even if the stock's going higher, it's probably going to hit some selling there and be a pretty stress-free, easy trade. And I'm looking for the easy money. I don't have Eric's patience and his fortitude and guts to get into fights, and he's tougher than I am.
But it's good that you recognize that, at least, and you're not trying to take somebody else's strategy, their personality type, their trading profile, and try to mold yourself to it. It sounds like, over time, you've really started to develop your own style for trading and your own niche, if I could, use that word.
I was telling Craig this a while ago. I don't know, a year ago maybe, that it's kind of funny that for so long, I don't think most people even believe this, but it's true. Really, when I say I followed people for the first 15 years, I'm telling you, I don't know that I placed a single trade during that period of time on my own. That was my own idea. And now I can't follow other people. I just can't. I mean, and I trade with, I trade with three, four really great traders and a couple of, legendary traders that, people write books about these guys or chapters in their books about these guys. And I just can't blindly follow along, even though I know sometimes I should. I just can't do it.
And Tom, how did you get to that point? What was that transition like? Because it's quite a remarkable transition. I mean, how do you go from, following alerts and having, as you mentioned, pretty much like no of your own sort of trade ideas to a point where you're consistently profitable and you don't trust anybody except yourself. It's quite a remarkable transition, and I would imagine there's a lot of traders out there who might struggle with coming up with trading ideas. So how did you get to that point? Was there one particular first step that you took, or was it just a lot of steps over the course of years?
I suppose it was a lot of small steps, and it was getting to the point where I was taking trades because I understood at least in my mind, what should happen and why I thought it should happen. And it doesn't mean those are the only trades there are, or that they're even the best trades. It just means they're the trades I understand. And I followed for so long that I know that I'm far more likely to screw up your trade, your idea, if I don't understand, if it doesn't make sense to me. Like if I can't just look at it and go, oh yeah, I see what he's seeing. And I've become really just a technical trader. So if I don't see it on the chart, it's hard for me to buy in, even though I know you're smarter than me, you're probably right, and you're going to bank. My line, I don't have a line here. I don't like, it's not extended enough. And, but you're trading it, these guys are trading it for a completely different reason, really a higher level reason than I'm capable of, maybe. And yeah, I've just learned that if I make a trade based on my process and I lose, yeah, I hate losing, but I'm level one mad. If I take a trade based on somebody else's idea and lose, I'm like level 26 mad that I did that. So that's the difference.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that could be helpful for traders out there. If there's a trade that they see someone on Twitter or in some chat room or something, and they don't fully understand the trade, maybe they could save themselves money by just knowing when to say, this trade doesn't make sense to me. It wouldn't have made sense to Tom. It doesn't make sense to me. What would Tom do? Don't trade it.
It kind of goes back to that thing of how do you know till you know? Till you get the experience to know I shouldn't touch that, it's hot. there's just, there are no shortcuts, man. There, one way or the other, you're going to have to learn. I wish I'd have started learning earlier. I didn't really have the opportunity, but yeah, one of the things that everybody has to deal with is you've got to get burned to realize that the stove is hot. And there's a lot of stoves out there. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of them are camouflage. They don't look like stoves. And at some point, some people are not slow learners like me either. They pick it up faster. Alex Spacito is like, he has intuition and a natural ability that I never had. So I had to kind of learn it all, but I think there's a lot more of me than there are of him in the world. So yeah, you just got to be careful along the way and, live to fight another day so you can get a little bit smarter.
Tom, you've traded with amazing traders. You're surrounded by amazing traders, to the point of self-sufficiency. Who can help you? For those traders who are having a hard time in the market, maybe, they're questioning their ability to continue trading. What advice would you give them in terms of who can help them?
Ultimately, the only person that can help you is you. People sometimes don't want to hear that, but it's true. But people who have been around a long time can give you some really good advice, general advice, but you've got to be willing to take it and do something with it. But I wish I had a better answer because, and I've told this to people a lot, that everything that you figure out in trading, somebody will have already told you. And you thought you knew it, but you never know anything until you figure it out yourself. So like, who hasn't been told or heard, you got to figure out what type of trader you are. Okay. And you go, yeah, that makes sense. That's what I'm going to do. I short small caps. That's the type of trader I am. Why? Is that really what you're good at? I finally figured out what kind of a trader I am, I guess. So yeah, you get all these things thrown your way that make perfect sense at the time, and you think you know them, but you still got to learn. But people do, I've found one of the things that I've always said is that people who are really successful are more than willing to help you. They may not sit there and hold your hand like Craig did with me, but they're generally willing to give you really good advice. But nobody can do it for you. I mean, my God, Mikhail and Craig couldn't do it for me. So in 15 years. So, I don't know if that's a good answer, or if that's even helpful, but I think that being around, if you have the opportunity to be around really great traders for an extended period of time, I think what you can pick up is an attitude, how they approach their job, and how they handle situations that you're going to run into. Like Craig, I got discipline, work ethic. I don't know any trader who's really good who doesn't show up every day. One of the things I've gotten from Tom is he's so calm. like maybe the best advice he ever gave me was, and I can hear him saying this because he's probably said it to me a few times, and I don't remember the exact instances, but I can just hear this in my head of Tom going, "Just relax, would you?" you know, uh, he can go to bed and think, yeah, everything's going to work out. Text me if we got a problem. And I'm like, you kidding me? I can't even take my finger off the cover button here. He's like, just relax, would you? Um, so, yeah, everybody I've been around who's been really good all has a similar approach, if you will, in the way they conduct their business. They may trade completely different, but they're serious and they work hard, and they always try to get better. They always try to figure out how they could be better, how they could improve.
One of the questions I had as well, on the topic of just knowing great traders and being surrounded by great traders, is I met you through Nate. So how did you first get introduced to Nate, and what has that relationship been like?
Um, I I want to say that I found out about Nate after Mikhail closed his room, and Craig told me I should join up with Nate, and that he was a hard worker. And this is a long time ago, man. I mean, this got to be like 2010 or something like that. I don't know when Investor Underground started, but I don't think it had been around a very long time when I joined. And probably because Nate knew I had been with Mikhail and Craig. I guess he accepted me really quickly, maybe. Like, I don't know if Craig said something to him or how that worked, but Nate's always been really good to me, really nice, and we kind of have a joking relationship back and forth. But yeah, however long I've been there, 12, 13 years, something like that. And yeah, I like it. I use it a lot for like my news, what's going on. Is news hits there pretty quick. Um, I'm not very active in chat, DMing Nate once in a while, just busting his balls or something like that, or him on me. But anyway, yeah, it's been a long time and still there. Nate's a great guy. I mean, he's another one of those guys he's disciplined. He works hard. He shows up every day. And so yeah, and he's honest. I mean, there's a lot of bad chat rooms out there. Thank God I've avoided them. But I have Twitter and stuff like everybody else, and there's a lot of crap out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Nate definitely focuses on trying to teach people how to think, how to trade for themselves and become independent, and successful. And he's just always working on something. He's always making a video to help people out, answering questions. And
I think one of the things that helped me help start. It was kind of like the push to get me down the road a little bit, and developing my own style was one of the DVDs that he made. Or I guess they weren't even DVDs, they were just online. It's a good thing because I've watched it so many times. If it was a DVD, I'd have probably worn it out. I don't even remember what it was called, to be honest with you. He made two of them. First one was kind of informational,
Yeah,
type of a
like textbook.
thing,
Yeah.
something like that. I remember I think he just included them with I don't know. I don't know how I got them, but I probably wouldn't have paid for them because I'm just that type of guy. But the second one, um,
Tandem trader.
okay, is where he was actually showing live trading.
Yes.
So that was really helpful to me. I mean, I used to watch that thing over and over again. Um, and I know it's completely not his style nowadays. Um, but that was the first time I'd actually seen somebody else trade. Um, Even just how he was set up and how his screens were and stuff like that. Um, so I just remember that being very intriguing to me, um, and like I say, that was in the very beginning, I think, of this figuring stuff out process. So uh, I've actually recommended to other people when they come along, watch that thing. Good. Um, that was good stuff. So anyway,
Yeah, I mean, for years, I just watch that like once a year just to watch it. It's always great to see someone else trade as well. I've recorded my screen plenty of times. I know how I trade, but
right.
hearing someone else's thought process is always kind of eye opening. One of the questions that I had for you, Tom, and I know we've discussed it a little bit, but I think it's kind of important and definitely interesting to talk about are some of the less flattering parts of trading, the accidents, if you will, that come up. And I can't think of a trader that I've ever met and talked to who didn't have some sort of story like these. I'm talking about, fat fingering an extra zero into your sizing, or thinking that you're short a stock and you're actually long, and that's why you're green on that name.
I've seen them all and done most. Um, yeah, this is the type of stuff that doesn't show up on Twitter for some reason. Everybody's perfect. And I kid with the guys that we really need to record our chat because we're on voice. That we could just take our screw ups and make a DVD and probably make millions of dollars. Um, watch how the pros do it. Um, but yeah, I mean, myself, I just a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting there. I'm not even watching the market. I haven't watched the market for 30, 40 minutes. Um, I was working on something else. I'm buying some real estate, and I don't know. I was working on the paperwork for an LLC or a lease or something. I don't know what it was, and I just knew when I started opening this stuff up that I shouldn't be on my main screen, or I should at least minimize my level two boxes. And I don't know how it happened. All of a sudden, ding, ding, ding. And I'm like, what's going on? And I closing windows because I can't even see anything because I got all these PDF files up and stuff. And I realized, oh man, I'm long Apple. And I have a rule that as soon as you make a mistake, just take it off. Um, and I look at the chart and I'm like, I kind of like it long. And I'm thinking, don't know where I should stop or whatever. And then I realized I'm short. And so anyway, I took it off. I made a couple of cents. And of course, with my luck, it literally fell $2 because I have great luck with meeting people in the trading world. I don't get any of the trading luck that they get. Um, but yeah, not long ago, um, just sitting around, nothing going on, dead silence in chat, and all of a sudden Tom is mumbling to himself, what the hell? What am I doing? What's happening? And he's like, man, what's going on over there? And he starts laughing. He's like, I meant to short Tesla, and it's not doing anything. And I'm making money, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. I accidentally shorted Netflix. And yeah, one guy screaming, out of the blue, stop, no, don't do that, and he meant to short 2,000 shares of Tesla, and he shorted 20,000, and he tanked like a point in 2 minutes, and he makes 20 grand. So yeah, we've all made these mistakes, but I say it doesn't get publicized. It's kind of the funnier part of trading sometimes. It's amazing how people look at somebody like Tom or Eric, maybe even me, because I've been around a long time. And I think they would be amazed how many mistakes we make. Just simple trading mistakes. But yeah, like I say, it's kind of funny when it happens. As long as nobody gets hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sort of to that end, would you say that trading gets easier over time?
Well, yes and no. Trading is easier in the sense that I'm not as lost as I used to be. I have a much better idea of what I want to do and what works for me and what doesn't work. But they don't just give you money, and you got to, I don't care how long you've been in the game. I think you got to show up focused and with your shoes tied tight. And so, yeah, I mean, there's somebody always out there wanting to take your money, and so no, I don't think it gets that much easier.
What sorts of things do you think traders can do to prevent themselves blowing up early? What could they do to prolong their trading career so that they can continue trading long enough to give themselves a good chance of making it in this profession?
I suppose nobody wants to hear this, but the reality is start with more money. Most businesses go out of business because they don't have enough capital to survive long enough to figure out how to make money and what their business model is. And that's very much true with traders as well, is that they run out of money before they learn what works for them. And it's because a lot of them come in with such a small amount of money. And I get it. But man, this is a game that requires capital, in my opinion. So I would say start with more, and slow down. Just slow down. This is not. I mean, sure, there are exceptions to this. I get it, but they're the needles in the haystack. For most of us, it's a process that takes a few years. It's not something that happens right out of the gate. And so, especially if you're young, you got a long time. It's better to learn. You might even be better off, you get a lot more out of learning than making money early on. Sometimes making money is the worst thing that can happen to you early on.
There's a lot of people that we've seen maybe who made a lot of money in 2020, 2021 who are struggling with the market going down.
A lot of those guys made money doing bad things. They're doing things that are not going to make you money in the long haul, and they thought they had something figured out, and they didn't. And I just had this conversation with somebody, and I said, look, I tell you, the Mikhail Shadkins, the Tom Kellys, the Eric Woods of the world did not bank buying AMC and Bitcoin and NFTs and stuff like that. They stayed away from that stuff. That's just not. That's those guys. They like I say they made money, but they didn't learn anything. What they did learn was bad process. Which is almost worse than having lost money.
Right. Because they might end up hardwiring and cementing those bad habits into their trading. Just it becomes sort of who they are as a trader, and then to have to undo that, you have to survive a downturn in the market like we saw in 2022.
Right.
Yeah, and in all of the years that you've traded, what period has been the most remarkable? We just sort of saw this COVID 2020 sort of quick bear market, and then a bull market, and then back down. But you've got much more insight than those few select years. So, is there a period of time that you think about as being like truly something remarkable?
Well, I'm not sure I could say just one. Obviously, the dot-com crash was pretty remarkable. As I mentioned earlier, an index falling 78% isn't something you see all the time. And so many of those companies that were high flyers, haven't existed for a long time. 2008 was pretty remarkable in that it was more scary than the dot-com crash. I remember moving money, man. I mean, I remember having money at one bank, I think it was called SunTrust in Florida, and sending my wife there to take money out and put money at Bank of America and at Citibank or something like that, because I think at that time the FDIC only insured up to 100,000, and maybe because of the financial crisis it got bumped up to 200,000. I don't exactly remember what the numbers were, but I know we were over, and that's pretty smart people saying, yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to make sure you're under the FDIC limits. It was so that was pretty remarkable, like I say, in the fact that it was so scary. COVID was pretty remarkable in the speed, both to the downside and the reversal. The 87 crash was actually, it might have been the most remarkable of all. But I was 26 years old. Inexperienced. I didn't really have any context to put it in. I didn't know what was going on, but I think it would have been a lot more scary had I known what was going on, to be honest with you, knowing what I know now. But so yeah, those are those are some pretty wild times, all of them.
And these days, how much attention do you pay to like outside your circle of like trusted traders that you trade with? You know, the Twitter, the Wall Street bets of Reddit, or, you know, any other sort of like peripheral.
They'll make it real easy, zero. I don't even look at Twitter during the day. Um, I don't watch CNBC. I'm not in any chat rooms other than Nate's, and I'm using that. Just I want to see what Nate's doing and what the news is, um, but yeah, zero. I have my charts, my lines, my moving averages, and
Do you ever feel burned out from trading?
um, not really. Uh, I don't think that I don't think you can do this if it's a job. Like, I mean, if you feel like it's work for you, I don't know how you'd ever put in all the work that you have to put in, if that makes any sense. Um, so I show up every day. Uh, in fact, I say that, and yet I think it was last Thursday I didn't show up, um, which was probably the first time in 5, 6 years. But even if I'm sick, like too sick to trade, I'll be there. Just watching what's going on. I remember back, I don't know, April, maybe it was. Anyway, the second COVID booster just about killed me. And there was no way I could trade, but I was there. Because what else am I gonna? It's like I don't want to miss anything. Like even if I can't trade it, I want to see what's going on. If you don't have that level of curiosity and um, interest, I don't know how you make it in this business, but that's me. So no, I don't really get burned out.
Tom, what's your perspective on paper trading for whether it's a new trader or even, you know, someone with as much experience as you have? Do you think paper trading is entirely a waste of time, or do you think there's some benefits to it?
I think it depends how you do it. Um, I learned a ton from the on-demand section of Thinkorswim, and that was when I used it to kind of. It's when I started to develop my lines and seeing the reactions off of different moving averages and stuff like that. But I also had the ability. I don't know. Well, maybe I don't know if this is an ability or not, but um, I I was able to replicate the kind of the emotional environment of real trading. Maybe I don't know, that might make me just really strange, but um, so I spent a lot of time in there. I would spend 8, 10 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday um, in Thinkorswim, and not for like 1 or 2 weeks. I mean, I did that not every weekend, but for a long time. I mean, a year and a half, maybe. People are probably out there going, wow, man, this guy's slow. Um, and maybe I am, it took me that long, but I just, I started seeing patterns after from doing that, like, oh yeah, that moving average consistently stop stocks when they're this far extended from this moving average, um and seeing how stocks played around my lines and go, it's a lot of times I would be on there on the weekend going over trades that had happened during the week, that week, even if I didn't take the trade. So So yeah, I think it can be really helpful, but it's, what's that thing, perfect practice or makes perfect or something like that. You got to practice the right things. You can't just be in there blindly staring or half-assing it and just clicking buttons and seeing what happens or something. I had things I was working on that I was trying to establish what worked and what didn't. And like I said, that my lines took me a long time to trust my lines because I didn't understand why they worked, and specifically why they worked so well sometimes and not so well other times. And then I kind of started figuring that out through on demand, really.
Great. Yeah, I know that's one of the things that we had both talked about having in common is being able to go and use on demand over the weekend and getting even emotionally invested in a trade, taking it that seriously. So for me at least, and I'm sure to others out there, I think it's important to hear other people, successful traders who've been doing this for a while, have had similar experiences.
Well, you get out of it what you put into it, like anything else. That's that emotional. Maybe some people may have that ability to do that because they can't separate the fact that this is just a game. It's not even real. But I'm silly enough that I'm able to do it.
Yeah, it's a purposeful sort of practice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And Tom, if it's okay with you, I'd love to just wrap up by asking a series of short questions and maybe getting quick answers if that's okay with you, like a rapid fire round.
I'll try.
Cool. So the first question is, what is the best advice that you've received from another trader?
It would probably either be the risk management from Craig or just relax from Tom. I don't know that I've gotten anything that changed my life, but just relax probably changed my life as much as anything did. I used to be terrible when I was down.
How do you approach a loss? What can traders do to move on after a loss or a big loss?
To me, there's two types of losses. There's losses on good trades that didn't work out, and there's stupid losses. And good trades that didn't work out, you shouldn't put any attention on at all, as far as I'm concerned. Stupid trades, you should just beat the crap out of yourself. That's what I do. And just get mad at yourself. It, you know, that's what works for me. And then I don't do them for a long time. I want it. I want to feel the pain.
If the market has changed and people aren't changing up their strategy and they find that they're losing, what advice would you give them about getting out of that slump?
One of the things that I think I heard this first from All Day Holds that I've really taken to heart and I've found it to be true, is that everybody's entitled to a bad day and into a bad week. But if you have a bad month, either one of two things is true. Either your process is flawed or you're not following it. And so that doesn't sound very nice. That's not to put your arm around the guy and go, oh, it'll get better. But that's what I really believe. I've had 2 losing months, 2 red months in the past 3.5 years. And both of those months, I just didn't follow my process. I just went nuts. And so I would say markets change insofar as their vibe, but stocks still move the same way. And so your process either works or it doesn't work, and it's just really that simple. And I'm speaking specifically to a day trader.
Do you tend to use some sort of max loss, whether it's through your platform, your broker, or just a number that you keep in mind that you stop trading if that's reached?
No, I don't. I kind of know in my head when we're getting into a bad area. Like I know I can make this back, no problem. I kind of know when I'm getting to that point where, well, this is going to leave a mark. But I'd never let it get to the point where it's a disaster.
Do you tend to use hard stops or mental stops when you're thinking about where you'll end a trade?
Yes. Um, so a lot of times what happens is my trades start out with mental stops, and that will turn into a hard stop. Because maybe I'll get in and I say, well, it shouldn't go back above this. That should have killed it. But most of the time, it's just mental stops. And this year, like I said, I've been doing a lot of scalping, and for the most part, they've got to work right away or not. I always regret adding to a scalp. If I'm too early, I come to now just take it off and look for another line. So yeah, usually don't have a hard stop right out of the gate, but sometimes I will put a hard stop in after I've been in the trade. Or if I cover some, I may put a hard stop in on what I have left.
Do you tend to scale in and scale out of your trades, or do you tend to have one big entry?
I tend to have one entry because I'm usually looking at something very specific, like extension into my lines, into a moving average, and it's kind of a this is it or I'm wrong area. As far as getting out, I really wish I would scale out. I don't that often, but it's probably something that I should put on my list of things to work on for next year. Habits are hard to break. And I can't tell you how many times I cover something and go, why didn't I keep some? And, but I think about it like 5 seconds after I've already filled. I'm in the heat of the moment, you just revert to your training, I guess. And I've trained myself to cover everything, and I wish I need to break that habit. That's something that costs me. I'm not good at that.
Are there any particular technical indicators that you use on your charts?
Yep. I use the 20 period moving average on all my charts. On my bigger charts, I also use the 50 period. I use some others that I change once in a while that I play around with. But mostly the 20s and the 50s, the 100. Nothing really exotic. It's more for me of everything coming into line with the moving, the short term, the long term, and my line. That to me is the perfect scenario of everything converging together.
One last question, Tom. For those listening who want to learn more about your trading style, how can they do so, or what advice would you give them?
I give them the same advice that they've probably already been given and that was given to me and probably been given to you and to every other trader out there. Figure out what works for you. What I do isn't for everyone. I mean, Eric would soon slit his wrist than trade the way I trade. And you just got to figure out what makes sense to you, man, and what works. And that may take a while. If you're lucky, you've got the intuition of an Alex Esposito, and by the time you're 26, you'll be well on your way to making it. And you may end up being a Tom Brown. You may be sitting here at 60, just figuring it out. But a lot of people have asked for help. I think I told you this. The only people I've really ever helped are people who would have made it anyway. I probably helped Alex a little bit, but I only probably helped him to the degree that maybe it saved him a little bit of time of getting where he was ultimately going. I've helped Kilo some, but he was going to get there with me or without me. So yeah, I mean, just I learn how stocks move. That's a big thing. Learn how stocks move. And don't be afraid to try different things, because that's ultimately how you're going to figure out what works for you, and accept what doesn't work for you. Accept the fact that you may not be able to do what that superstar on Twitter that you so admire and want to be like. Maybe you can't. Maybe that's just not the game you're in here for. But doesn't mean you can't succeed, and it doesn't mean you can't develop a style that's equally as good, although completely different.
That's amazing advice, Tom. Thank you so much for being here, taking the time to speak with me today. I think it's an amazing way to kick off the new year. So again, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and everybody who watches.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.